welcome to this evening's presentation of clearances and product placement. My name is Kris Boxell from Motion Pictures and Television, and I am the faculty lead for production design. Thank you all for coming out this evening. And hello online. Love having you. So clearances and product placement, what are they? Every production in a film studio or an independent company must clear likenesses, individual names, business names, telephone numbers, license plate numbers, street addresses, signage, logos, graphics, or icons that are displayed in set dressing or on clothing. So there are a lot of things to consider, and generally a production will have a single person who will be the product placement and clearance coordinator. It's actually a very good job as an entry-level position on a production, and it's a lot of hard work. So frequently, the art department coordinator will take on that job until it becomes so large that it's clear that somebody has to be a specific product placement and clearance coordinator. So clearances and product placement are two different things. Clearances are when you're using something and you get permission from the company to use those items or their logos. Product placement is when you work with a company to have their products shown in your film. Not necessarily as specific as on a commercial, but just that you get permission, and in some cases you get the product. You get to use the product for free. So in the case of cell phones, desktops, laptops, you can save a lot of money by not having to buy or rent your electronics. It also happens with phones that are used in the home. I realize many of us don't have landlines anymore, but they do come up in scripts. So, other things that need to have clearances are things like photographs. So here I have some photographs. Some of them may be of landscapes or buildings, people, or things. And you have to have permission from the photographer and from the people who are in those photographs. I find that it's a really good idea that when you're traveling, take your own photographs. And then you can do your own release. But you will still have to do your own release even if it's your own photograph. Now, other things that need to be released or get cleared are books. And they can be paperback books. They can be hardback books. They can be books without covers. Depends how much you're seeing it. This book has a plain cover, so maybe you don't have to get a clearance on this particular one unless you're seeing it close up from the side. It might be if the book is open, it's just an open book, so we don't have to have a clearance. But this is Joy Luck Club. It's a pretty identifiable cover, and so you would have to get permission from the publisher, and in some cases even the author. Another option, of course, is you could take the cover off. But we have a little identification on the front, too. If we see it, if we can identify it, we might need to get clearance. So permission is always a good thing. Now, some people think, oh, if it's only on screen for a few seconds, I don't need clearance. There's no one rule for that. So instead, every production company or studio will have their own rules. And those rules can get pretty big. So when you first start a production, and if you're going to be in the art department, especially if you're working with set decorations and props, you want to find out what is the company's policy. Okay? And those policies can go on for pages and pages and pages. So for instance, these are pages, and it's all in legalese. This was from one particular production company. It goes on and on and on. So this particular book is a log of all the permissions for one particular TV show. That's a lot, okay? Every item has to get clearances. So if you're lucky now, when we're talking about a photograph, like all these photographs right here are by the same photographer, which is pretty convenient because then you can get one release from that photographer that covers all of these images. Often the artist or photographer or author wants to know how their product is being used. Because even though you might say, hey, I want to show your product, it's going to be free advertising if I show your beer at the bar. So can I have permission to show your beer? We might go to local beer companies, might be Boone, out in the Anderson Valley, or it might be one of the breweries in Berkeley, and we'll say, hey, we'd love to use local product in our movie instead of just using Budweiser, because they always give you beer. So they'll say, okay, cool, but what if you're using their beer to knock somebody over the head with the bottle? Maybe now it's not such a good idea. So you have to give them the script pages or a synopsis of your story when you're asking them for the permission. Okay, so that you're showing it in a good light. Now, another thing with books, if you're showing a picture book, for instance, you might have a book of photographs. Guess what? You don't just need a permission from the publisher, you have to make sure you have permission from the photographer. Yeah, so if you're lucky, one photographer for the book. If you're not lucky, you have multiple photographers. Yes?
So, if you don't really see the book?
Like if it's just closed?
Yeah, like if it's like open, but with just that picture.
You're safer to actually get permission to show it. The other thing you could do is replace the open pages with your own photograph. So that could work. Or find a page that has writing, and then you're not in such a situation. But you have to make sure whoever's working the set, your on-set dresser or your on-set props people, that some actor isn't just sitting there and going through the book and all of a sudden they leave it open to this page and that's not the page that you have permission for. So, yes.
So what if they open it, but like quickly?
Like they're going through it?
Yeah.
It's tricky. It's tricky. I would just be careful. Okay? I would try to get a cleared book for something. If it's going to be a featured prop, it's good to make your own. One time I was on a movie, and we had a set that was Whoopi Goldberg's character. Name of the movie was Made in America. And her character had a bookstore that specialized in African books and things that were from Africa. In fact, this lovely statue is from that movie. So, there was a book that was in the script, and it was a book of African art and artifacts. And the prop master created a book, and he had a cover, this kind of a paper cover that you put around a book made. And we shot it. And then when they were checking all the clearances, it ended up that, yes, in fact, he created the cover, but he used a photograph that he didn't have cleared. And at that point, all they could do was call the photographer and ask for permission. And the photographer said, sure, you can have permission if you give me $3,000. So $3,000 was a lot cheaper than reshooting the scene. The whole thing could have been a lot cheaper if they had either asked that photographer in advance, and if he had said $3,000, they would have said, no, thank you, we'll do our own picture. And so it's a live and learn situation. You want to get as much taken care of in advance. I've been on shows where the production insists that everything on the set has a clearance. So for instance, if you have artwork and you don't know who the artist is, then you just don't have it on your set. So it's better to have permission before you put anything on the set. Illustration, same thing. Like, let's say that we have illustrations in a book. It might be a kid's illustrated storybook. Well, you're going to need permission from the artist the same way you need permission from the photographer. Yeah, kind of goes the same way. So other printed material, we might have newspapers. You're trying to feature a city. This is the San Francisco Weekly. It's a freebie. We have the Examiner, also free. So you then need to contact the publisher. And that's usually on the inside page. Now, if you can't get permission from them, what do you do? Right, but what do you do if you need a newspaper? You make one. Yeah, that's exactly right. You make your own. So at that point, you have to clear the title that you want to use. You don't just make up a title and go to press with it. You have to make sure that that's not something that already exists. Yeah. So if you just want to show newspapers around on the table, again, be sure that you don't have it open to an advertisement that you don't have permission for, or open to a photograph that you don't have permission. So you might have to make your own newspaper. Yep, yep.
If I block some titles, how much I need to block?
There's no, that's that thing. Every company has a different thing. Some people might say, oh, I heard it's 25%. I heard it's 10%. There's no, you got to check those fine print on the pages of the deal from your production company or your studio to find out. It's better to just, because if you're saying I'm going to hide it, like what, with what? Like you're going to put a phone there and hide it, and then it slips. Change the words, just start over. We're at an art school. Talk to the graphic designers, have them do. This is the beauty of the Academy of Art. We've got like 20-some schools at the Academy. You've got graphic designers, you've got photographers, you've got fine artists, you've got sculptors, you've got web designers who can help you if you have to make, and game designers who can make a game for you to use when you're using your prop game system and a situation in a movie or, some kind of TV show, whatever you're doing. We have people here, talented people. Why not use them? So, for instance, you could make your own paper, your own newspaper. We had a paper here in town called the Bay Guardian. And we got permission on a movie to use the Bay Guardian title. But we made our own cover. We wrote our own story. We used our own Photoshop photograph of people that we had permission to show their images. So you create it yourself. And then going in what you're going to put on the inside. We were looking at, you have to know how is it going to be used. You need to have a commitment from your director. Because if your director says, oh, I only want to see one article, and then day of the shoot it's like, no, I want to see the whole paper, and they're going to, that's a different task for the art department. So another thing might be magazines. And the beautiful thing is, magazines come in lots of different shapes and sizes and subjects. And frequently, you can get permission from the magazine to use it in your show. And they might even give you back issues. This happens a lot with cooking magazines, travel magazines. This happens to be Surfer's Journal. And the nice thing about this is it's from Southern California. I did a movie that took place in the Mission District in San Francisco, and so we had lowrider cars, and we were able to use lowrider magazines. And they were very happy to give us permission and also back copies, which was very nice. Now, sometimes you just get the permission to use it, but you have to buy your own. But what if you don't get permission and you want to have a surfer's magazine? You got to make it, right. So think about what you're going to put on the inside, what the guts are, if all you have to do is make the outside. Your graphic designer or your art director or your prop master will figure out the size, come up with the design, find out how many they have to make, and come up with a schedule. So you have to figure out what's the binding, how you put it together, because you don't want it to look unrealistic. And then you put it all nicely together, boom, you're all set to go. Other things you might have to get permission, as I have up here. These are just some examples of graphics and signage that I've used that I've had clearances for movie and television projects. So if I'm doing a movie that takes place in San Francisco, very early in the pre-production, I'll go to the art department coordinator or the clearance person, if we've got one that's specifically just doing product placement and clearance, and I'll give a list to that person. I'll say, please contact California Academy of Sciences, the Exploratorium, San Francisco Symphony, the ballet, all of the theater companies, and I give them a list of all that. Farmers markets, Stern Grove, where they have music every summer for free. And then when they say, well, what do you want to use? And we say, we might want to have permission to use your graphics inside a bus. You know, these were from buses. So that's what those sizes are for. So they gave us their artwork. Here's a couple more, Yoshi. So we go to like jazz clubs and things. And this one's Project Open Hand. Okay, so they give us the JPEGs, and then we create the artwork. It might also be from them that we'll get flyers. And then this can be mail that comes to the house of the characters. It might be schedules of events that you put on a bulletin board or onto a refrigerator. And so now suddenly we have realistic things. We don't have to make this because we have clearances. That helps us a lot. So then we minimize what we have to create in graphic design. Another thing might be menus, right? Menus. This happens to be from a butcher in San Francisco who's always very happy to give us clearances for their logo, okay? They have menus. They have bags with their name on. They have paper bags with their name on. So they find it touching to watch a movie and see some of their stuff. Plus, then that's one more thing we can use that we have permission to use, which is pretty exciting. Hi. Another group, another category to contact would be things like, and this would be if your characters fit this type of family, let's say. So you might contact World Wildlife Federation, or you might do, let's see, like Greenpeace or Doctors Without Borders. And so you'll get little patches or decals that you can use in different places, bulletin boards again. Or if you've got a kid in your story, they have stickers all over everything, so you have to get all those stickers cleared. Because if you were going to design 20 different stickers, my goodness, your graphic designer would go, their eyes would cross. And then the other nice thing is these companies have things like calendars. Wow. So if you can get clearance from them for calendars, that gets you through anything from an office to a kitchen to a dorm room. Now, Project Open Hand, who I mentioned, and they do good works in San Francisco, they come out with a nifty little calendar every year. And I've used this in countless TV shows and movies. Another thing you can do, of course, is design your own calendar. Use your own photographs, talk to an illustrator, get some illustrations. All of these postcards now, it's like we're in Postcard City, all these things. So what I'll do is I keep collecting these things, and when it's time for us to have a movie, I give, okay, here's what I want to use, and then I have the coordinator, the product placement clearance coordinator, call these companies and get permission. every single postcard. And it's, you know, every single thing you have on a bulletin board, every schedule, every map. This happened to be a Greenpeace map. Just the map that you get from the automobile club, you have to have permission. If you're doing a large map of a city, there's companies that create maps, and they will usually give you permission, because to have a map created takes a lot of skill for your illustrator or your artist. But it's not impossible. Also, you can look at something like Google Maps and see what that does. But don't try to use anything that identifiable and think that you're not going to get a phone call or an email that says, you can't show that anymore. You don't have permission. In some cases, let's say that it's like a network, like NBC or ABC, and they're doing lots and lots of shows. They may subscribe to a particular service where they can get things like stock photos, stock video. And so they will pay a certain amount of money, and every month they can access a certain number of images to use in their shows. That's a pretty good deal. For thesis films, for student films, less likely to do that. But in a little while, I'll show you some things that you can do that are part of public domain. So that can help a lot. But again, I would say just keep taking your own pictures, you know, or get somebody to make phone calls and get permission. Now, also, you're going to want to, whenever you're making these things, you might be able to emulate a style. In other words, not rip off their style, but use this as a jumping off point. So for color, for size, maybe the borders, maybe even what's on a menu, that sort of thing. So think about the usage for whatever it is that you're designing. But do it early. So your graphics list, your signage list should come pretty early. As all of you who are in the art department know, all of our lists, all of our pre-production, that's where we want to solve all of our challenges, because we don't have problems, we only have challenges.
I have a question from online.
Yes?
The question is, why would a company say no to free advertising or free exposure?
Good question. Because, and I'm going to quote, I have that answer. Okay. As an example, even though you think that placing a can of Coca-Cola as set dressing in a kitchen is actually free advertising, the Coca-Cola company reserves the right to know how the product is displayed. It also needs to be assured that its product is not used in a way that will defame it or show it in a negative way. So, and that is open to interpretation. You might think, oh, just because this person is drinking 6 Cokes a day and they're running around like a rabbit and having, you know, bad behavior, it's free advertising for Coke. Coke might look at that and say, that's not what we're about. So then suddenly, here's what you really want to avoid. If this clearance is not sought, or if the process is not effective, lawsuits are not unlikely, as in lawsuits are likely. So get into the habit of using clearances and product placement even on student films. So we've got some cool stuff here in the Bay Area. Now, Starbucks is the kind of place that likes to use product placement on movies. Usually right away, they're always like, oh, yeah, no problem. Me, I live in San Francisco. I like Phil's. I like Pete's, okay? So I go, hey, call Pete's. Pete's is really great. Pete's has bags of coffee. Pete's has to-go cups. Pete's has a variety of teas in cans that are really decorative. I love Pete's. All right. Now, fill. I love fill too. Because you know what? Maybe you have more than one house. There's the Phil's house and there's the Pete's house. There's the Ritual Coffee house. There's the 4-barrel house. Sometimes there's the Blue Bottle house. You can have different people in places drinking different coffee because it's San Francisco. And the cool thing is, Phil, at Phil's, his name is Phil, by the way, Phil will often give you 5 pounds of coffee. He's done it on student films, too. Yeah, yeah. Not to mention, give you the to-go cups that you can use as props. Now, those Starbucks cups, they're rather ugly. They're usually white. And then everybody has the little band around it, and you never see steam coming out of it. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, so it's not good. So, also, you might have to make your own label sometime if you're not somewhere where they have Pete's or nobody bothered to get clearances. But isn't it nice when you say, hey, we want to show your product, and they go, great. Make sure you send them the form, make sure you get the form back, and that it's signed. Okay? That's super important. Yes?
If we need some, like apple juice,
yes.
do you have any company that recommend?
For apple juice? Well, is it sparkling apple juice?
No.
Okay. Regular apple juice?
Yeah.
Well, yes.
Oh, really?
Yes. Okay. So you could go to, what is it called? Not Musselman's, that's on the East Coast. Yeah, I think Martinelli's also has a still one. It does, yeah. Martinelli's, yeah. And Martinelli's sparkling apple juice is what we use for champagne.
Oh, Martinelli.
Yeah, it's like MARTINELL''S.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. And you're not killing anybody with apple juice in the story. Okay, good, good. Yeah, because before Sonoma County had all that wine, they had apples. Yeah, so there's a lot of local apple juice things. And the people that make pear cider and apple cider are up that way too. Yeah, so they should be easy. Now, I've also gone to, like, even on Woody Allen's Blue Jasmine, we had a scene. It was a high-end kind of party for people over in Marin County, and they wanted to have wine. So I called up some of my friends in Napa, and I said, who of your friends and neighbors don't mind, giving us some bottles of your wine and signing permission, and we will show your wine. Maybe, maybe not, but they were up for it, because you can't guarantee them that it's going to get screen time. But they were tickled pink, and they even sent extra wine for the director and his family. So it's not to say that you couldn't design your own labels, but it's a lot nicer if you do something like call Bonnie Dude Winery and say, hey, look, I've been buying your stuff for years. Do you mind if we show it? Because, of course, we're going to fill it with not wine, right? We're going to fill it with, if it's white, what do we use? White grape juice, that's right. And if it's red, we will use probably cran apple juice or cranberry juice, but that gets a little bitter. Yeah. And then, now, you might not get permission for the whiskey people, but you can make a label. But you could try. You could try. And some of the spirits, some of them are made domestically now. And so I was on one really low-budget movie, and somehow the producer got clearance and product placement from some Kentucky bourbon. Wow. Of course, we still emptied the bottle and put, what's this? Arizona iced tea, that's right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yes. We do not give actors alcohol. Yeah, plain and simple. Even if they say, I can say my lines much better, no. 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 It's just a big no. And I won't even, well, I could tell you the funny story about, yeah, so one time there was this international movie that was coming through town, Vim Vendors, and his girlfriend was the main actress. She was French circus performer, and William Hurt was also in the movie. And anyway, she was really nervous or whatever with her with her part. And so the owner of the cafe where we were kept giving her real champagne. And about 2 in the morning, she could no longer say her lines, and so we had to stop filming. Because we were scheduled to film for about 3 or 4 more hours. So, yeah, you don't want to do that. Yeah. It's just a good idea not to. Yeah. Okay. All right, so greeting cards, that's another thing. Now, that could be a fun one for you to make. Although, there are a lot of small greeting card companies, or Papyrus, which has gotten bigger. But there's a company that was called Pomegranate, and there are some other ones. So what you do is you go and you look at the back of the card, you see who the publishing company is, have your people call their people, and say, hey, we would like to use your greeting cards. Or make your own. It's not that hard to make your own. Posters, we were talking about some of these posters, but also if it's have any of you made posters for anything? Okay. And did you do them for a movie or did you do them for some other activity? Okay.
Quick question.
Yeah.
If my story about the main character collects the baseball card.
Oh, yes.
Really classical one.
Oh,
really
dear.
Expensive.
Yes.
So how to solve this problem?
Well, baseball cards.
Yeah.
Yes. Wow. How old are those baseball cards?
I don't know. I just not my story. I just have this idea.
Yeah.
And
You should be prepared to make your own baseball cards because a lot of times important popular figures have an estate. So even if they've been dead for a while, their descendants still own the rights to their image. And so you might have to pay for the use of their image. Yes?
So is it still like the 100 years thing?
No. The 100 years thing, don't count on it. I mean, it's a nice way to start a conversation, but don't use that as your excuse when you go to court and have to testify. No, don't. I mean, 100 years, it depends on what the item is also. But it's like, but I mean, I can't even say, I mean, and again, it's like, you know, I pulled some of the paperwork for a few of the different projects I did in the last few years, and each studio, each production company is different. And some of them, because they've been taken to court in the past, whether they've won or lost, they just don't want to go through it. And the bigger the company, the deeper the pockets. Do you know what that means? If you have deep pockets, somebody wants to go into your deep pockets and get the money. Yeah, yeah. But and so you think, well, okay, I'm a student film, right? I have no pockets, right? I've got, in fact, my pockets are like, there's holes in my pockets. But what if your film does really well and starts playing festivals, and then somebody wants to show it as part of a collection of shorts, and suddenly you're making deals for, you know, Germany or Asia or PBS. And so now more people are going to see it and go, whoa, 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 that's my artwork, and nobody asked me if they could use it. Same thing like with the music. You know, you want to be careful. Yeah.
So do these companies have like some kind of people that just look for?
Oh, God, yes. Oh, I hate to say it, but yes. Yes. Yeah. No, and it's tricky because it won't happen while you're making your movie, but the minute it starts being seen and if it's popular, I mean, yeah, they have people. Yeah. No, one of the scariest things I ever read was regarding 2 pieces of artwork that were from a rental house. And the people who rented it thought that because they rented it from a rental house that it was cleared. And on page 5 of the rental agreement, in a little tiny paragraph about this big, it says, just because you're renting it doesn't mean it's cleared. So we were all like, whoa, be careful. Be careful. There is a place in San Francisco called the Lost Art Salon, and much of the art that you can buy or rent from them is in fact cleared, which is nice. There are places in LA and Hollywood that have cleared art. but not everything they have is cleared. So you have to be super careful and see what the usage is, because sometimes the usage might say just for the movie, not for the publicity. Wow. Yeah. Do your own artwork. Yeah. So we did maps. Now there are some maps that are created by the government. And the government's pretty good about giving permission for things. So for instance, NASA, all the different space stuff. That stuff is easy to use. Here's the tricky part. So here's a poster. Now, this is a NASA image because there aren't too many other people who go up in space and take photographs. But this particular poster was from a company. So it's a NASA JPL poster. And then this particular company that printed it is called Hansen. Well, this one's from Hansen Planetarium. So this one was okay. This one you could use. I think this is the one. Oh, and this is Earth. This is Earth. But one of these that I have floating around here, it was printed by a company that does greeting cards and posters and calendars and things like that. And so we needed permission for that one, which is weird. But if you get NASA images off the NASA JPL site, print it out yourself, you're fine. In fact, we just did a thesis film on the weekend, and they had a character who was much into like UFOs and things like that. And I said, well, hey, JPL has these great vintage posters that are free use, but you have to give them a credit. So I was on a web series early last year, and we were going to do those posters. Except then the production company, the studio above the production company, because there was this thing that said you have to use a credit line, you have to give us a credit. It's free, you can use it, but you have to give us a credit. And the studio didn't want to do that. Yeah. So we didn't use it on that show. So instead, these guys in their student film, they're like, hey, we love the posters. We're happy to give a credit. Woo! How great is that? So you guys can do that too. And again, also with your space images. Just, get the, I mean, it's all, it's NASA. It's all high quality stuff.
How about we painting it by ourselves?
If you paint it, well, sure, just sign your own release. Yeah, yeah.
I designed how the Earth looks like.
Yeah.
But it's really similar,
Oh, good. Yeah, yeah. Yes.
Do you have to sign it if it's yours?
Do you, yes. Yeah, you should just have documentation of who owned, like who took the photograph, who did the painting, who did the graphic design. Yeah. Because otherwise, what happens? Like you fall over and you disappear because you run away, and then the next person is like, oh, I own it, but I don't know who did that. Yeah, worst case scenario. Right. Okay, so when we're talking about artwork, it's the artist and the subject. People normally think, okay, I understand that for a photograph, but what about artwork? Same thing with the artwork, especially, I guess maybe if you do an abstract, it's not as critical, but certainly if it's realistic artwork, you want to have the artist and the subject give their permission. And that's whether it's original work or also reproductions. So reproductions would be something like posters, postcards, things like that. So when we're talking about, so that's another thing. If you're getting these things from a company, like this is a playbill from the symphony. Yes, I had permission for this, but I was less likely to feature this because of the photograph of the woman. So I would be more inclined to do something that would be a graphic that ends up looking just like a design or somebody's, just somebody's like body parts. This particular one was for jewelry. I know the photographer, and I know the jewelry maker, so that one's easy. Now, where do you find artists if you don't find them at school? Where else might you find artists or artwork? Oh gosh, get away from the computer. We're in a city full of artists. Where do you find them? And don't say Oakland. Not that that's not true. Go to galleries. And where do you find those galleries? Open studios. Look at this. This is a book full of artists with maps. So even if you miss their open studio, their addresses and phone numbers and websites, yes, you can go on a website, are in here. I mean, you can, if you go on the open studio weekends, you can knock back 20 artists. No problem. You give them your card, they give you their card, you get their leave behind. And in fact, if nothing else, you get their postcard to put on your bulletin board or your refrigerator. Great stuff. That's the beauty of being in the Bay Area.
How about we just change that a little bit?
No. Oh, yes. Oh, hang on a second. No.
Could you repeat the questions that they asked?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. So his question is, how about if we just change a little bit? No. No. Didn't you ask me that before?
No.
Not in the same way. There is no rule that says change this percentage of something and it's okay. All right?
How about we change the Coca-Cola to Coca Cookie?
So, it depends. Now, there are companies in LA that will do that sort of thing with certain brands. But Coca-Cola is so iconic.
Okay.
All right, it's like its own universe. You know. So, how about if you do it with some other brand? Does it have to be Coke?
Yes.
Well, what are you going to do with this image when you change it?
Change the letter. Change the.
No, but how are you going to use it?
Maybe on the background, a really positive way.
Then just ask Coke if you can use Coke.
Okay.
They'll probably say yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they don't want money from you. Yes.
About reproduction.
Yes.
If, like, if you imitate an artwork,
Mm-hmm.
you use it actually.
That is a very interesting one, and that's going to be one where the wording gets really specific in your release. So if it doesn't look like a forgery, can you use a reproduction of an original artwork? Right? That's what you're saying? Yeah. So for instance, if you're showing a student who is trying to reproduce a Rembrandt, but not a forgery of the Rembrandt, that's probably fine because that artwork's old and things like that. But when I say probably, don't quote me, okay? It gets tricky all over the place. Yeah. Do we have another one from online? Okay, fine then. Great. Yes.
So, if it's you still need permission from like products from other countries.
Ah, good question. Products from other countries. So one of the things that I do frequently is I will use off-brands rather than major brands. So for instance, instead of using Kellogg's or General Foods for cereal, I will use things from Trader Joe's because they're very attractive, and Trader Joe's is very good about giving permission, which is nice. And I will go to the Mission. In fact, here we go. Pumpkin spice granola. Trader Joe's. I will go to the Mission District. I will go to Ranch 99 and buy those products from other countries. Maybe I live on the edge. Plus, they look cool. I like the way they look. Now, interestingly enough, something like Tabasco, a lot of times they give you product placement. So if you're on a tiny movie, like a student film, maybe instead of saying, hey, can we do product placement, all you do is say, hey, may I show your Tabasco? Do you have to do this with everything in the kitchen on a student film? You know, I mean, unless you're, again, like, you know, like putting Tabasco sauce in somebody's eyes to blind them. Yeah. Your Coca-Cola thing is an interesting question. I mean, you didn't miss the question, people out there. I'm just thinking back on his Coca-Cola, how much can we change of it? If you're doing parody, if you're doing jokey stuff, there's a lot you can do. I mean, think about what they do on, you know, Saturday Night Live. So you can get away with a lot more in parody, or if you're doing documentaries. So maybe take some time and just explore it and see what comes back to you. You know, like talk to your producing teachers and see what they say. Yeah, I mean, I haven't read, I mean, is it written in a script yet? Or
No, yet.
it's just like a high concept at this point? Okay, okay. Good. Up there in the ether with so much else. All right. Yes.
So I've seen like some shows that have like McDonald's, but it's spelled
Right, this is what he's talking about with the Coca-Cola. Yeah. That can work, you know. I mean, because you're not trying to sell it or something. Yeah, you're not trying to get people to come into the McDonald's that's not McDonald's. Yeah. Or the, you know, Starbucks that's not, you know, Starbucks or...
Just in the background.
Yeah, yeah. But then, yeah, so depending on what it is, maybe also you can use Coca-Cola. Okay. Logos, brands, and phrases. So let me say this, phrases is an interesting one because we often think of logos. Chanel, the 2 C's. If you were around a couple of years ago, Maria Chiara Venturini from Italy, one of our students who has now graduated, she did a parody of Coco Chanel. And so she kind of recreated the logo, but it was a parody, so it was okay. And in fact, the French love this film now, so it's okay. So just be careful what it is and how you're using it. But we don't use logos for set dressing, and we don't use logos on clothing. So be very, very careful with all the costume designers, all the wardrobe people you work with. So in addition to not using white, and not using black, and not using fussy little patterns and things that make your eyes cross, do not let them use logos. There's enough shirts that are striped. There's enough denim. There's enough denim and denim. Yeah, there's a lot of denim. There's a lot of polo shirts that don't have to have a giant guy on a horse. What do you have, the little guy on the horse? Oh, okay, yeah.
Right.
So no logos, no logos, no logos. No Nike, no anybody, no Joe Bag of Donuts logo, nothing like that, okay? Just no logos. All right, good. Brands. Same thing. Okay, so be careful of the identification. Now, if you get to a point where somebody's giving you stuff, like maybe you get in touch with the t-shirt company in San Francisco called San Francisco. They've got some good stuff. Or Upper Playground. Or everybody else that sends you emails about their t-shirts. Ask them for permission and have them give you some shirts. They're cool looking and they're not boring like Nike. Yeah, ask them. You know, Prana. Prana makes great yoga clothes. Lululemon might also. But don't show the logo if you don't have permission. Okay? And it might be as simple as, you know, maybe they lend you the clothes, maybe they give you the clothes, maybe all you have to do is give a little, you know, thank you at the end. Yeah.
What if the logo has much more significance than, you know?
What if the logo has significance to the character? You mean like it's in the script? Are you reaching for a thought here? Okay. I need more specifics on that one. You wait until it's in the script and then come to me and ask. Okay. Yes. Yes.
On some shows, they show like I've seen like a Sprite can or like a Cheez-It thing, and one of like the E's is blocked out. With
Right, right.
How far is that before that's pushing it?
Well,
'Cause that's
so when we Greek out things, it's called Greeking out. I mean, I hope that's not like That's what we've been calling it for years. So, and that might be where you just change a little bit of it, okay? And generally, you see that more on low budget stuff? Yeah, because usually the higher budget stuff, they've got a graphic designer who makes Coco that you're talking about, whatever, yeah, or something.
They do that stuff on like Big Bang Theory, and I'm like, why? That's like a big sitcom. I don't understand, like,
Yeah, no, I know, but they're all like, that's their day job. They're only there a couple days a week. Yeah, they're not really concerned. But, yeah, no, it's an absolutely valid question, and, yeah, they're fine. I mean, it's fine. You know, what you don't want to do is if you guys are taking, if you're taking a Home Depot box or, you know, like a Boise box, you don't want to take blue tape and go like that. You want to be a little more artistic about your Greeking. Yeah, it gets down to like, you want to keep the artistry alive. Definitely. Now, phrases, that's an interesting one. So that's going to come maybe more from the scriptwriter, but also phrases that you write out. Like, I can't think of any phrases offhand, but I'm sure if somebody thinks, loving it?
Yeah, I'm loving it. That's McDonald's.
Oh, right. Okay, good. Yeah. So it's like if you're printing that out, maybe don't. You can maybe do liking it. The good thing is you're in the era of the internet, so you can do the Google. Use the Google. And in fact, you know, you can reverse search on images, which is nice. You can just, like, if you have an image and you're wondering about it, feed it in. Because an interesting thing is I've been on shows where if you go to a thrift store and you buy a paint by number to use, you have to have permission from the person who designed the paint by number and the person who painted the paint by number. Yes. Any of you who are from China and you remember the Shanghai women advertising from the 30s, not that you were alive, but you know they've kind of brought it back over time, and really beautiful kind of, you know, this size shot, beautiful woman in the, how do you say the dress with the little collar, the shang, you know, that nice Chinese dress. You wear one, right? Yeah. Anyway. Okay, so, but, you know, and then they would advertise cigarettes or whatever. So those are things, that was advertising art from China from the 30s. Wanted to use it in a movie around the year 2000 because we couldn't identify who owned the rights to it or the artist. Couldn't use it. And they were beautiful. So, sad. Would have been nice. Would have been nice. If you need to do something like use a cell phone, but you haven't called Apple, well, you can cover the logos. Apple's usually pretty good. I only know of one circumstance where they didn't give permission for using their electronics. But you can also get covers, you know, that kind of take away the identification. Or you might put a sticker. You know, a lot of times that, yeah, a sticker. Now, okay. So he shows me a sticker, but it's Bob. Isn't that Bob from Burgers? No. What is this? Oh, well, see, but again, this is, you're not, that's not the sticker you use. Yeah, okay. Use the sticker of a planet. Okay. Now let me see. See, now yours, I would be less inclined to do this one because, well, mainly because it says douchebag. But like, if any of these are identifiable people, then don't use that. Like, get one with flowers or something. Yeah, yeah, or like something.
You still have to get the artist.
Less on that. I mean, I would say, you know, get something, you know, like a nondescript color might be better. Okay. Is it pink?
No, I just changed it. Now it like.
Oh, yeah.
One broke, but it was just full pink on the back. See the apple or
Names. People's names. A lot of times people don't write, hi, come on in. So often people will not write down in the script what the person's first and last name is. But maybe we have a scene at the office and we need their nameplate, okay? Or we might have a doctor and we need to know his or her name, okay, like first and last name. Then those names we have to clear. Okay, But we need to know the names. So it's like if it just says, oh yeah, Bob the doctor, so it's like Robert and what's the rest of his name? You know, like we need to know that so it can be cleared, so we can make signage. We might need to make a driver's license.
Use the producer's name.
No, you don't use the producer's name. Okay. For everybody in the script, it is funny because often people will use the crew names. So you'll see crew people on a tombstone. You know, or everybody on the list of what room do you go to at the office building, you go, hey, wow, that looks like a lot like the Grip and Electric crew, right? So, so that happens a lot. Okay, but your crews aren't big enough sometimes to supply all the names you need for your show. Okay, but it is important for the key featured characters to have a first and a last name. We just need that, and it's better to have it early. It doesn't, I mean, if it's not in the script, the director should at least have an idea, or the writer, what the name is, because we have to do a lot with it. Same thing with companies. So if we have a company, we have to clear it. Okay, we don't just go, oh, it's the Electronic Company of San Francisco. Well, maybe that exists, so you have to find out. If it's the name of a restaurant, you want to make sure that it doesn't exist. Or if it does exist, you ask them for permission to use it. So if you're shooting, is anybody shooting at a cafe, or have you shot at a cafe or a restaurant? Or you have anything coming up? I know a couple of the films. Okay, you're going to be? Oh, that's right, you're going to a couple of them, yeah. So in that case, has your producer talked to them about using their name?
Yeah, well, we asked at the location, and they said absolutely, and like their plates have their logo on it. And
Excellent.
like, yeah, and the producer's just going to get all the paperwork they need to fill out.
Excellent. Great, great. That helps so much, because now you don't have to redo the menu, unless you don't like the menu. And if their logo's good, you get to do the logo. But you also need them to fill out the paperwork. Okay, they have to fill out the paperwork. And
Now, would it just be for that one name? Like, I wouldn't have to be like, here, this is for to use the menu, this is to use the plate. Like,
well, what I would do, I was just going to, yeah, what you want to do is, along with the agreement that they signed, I would take a picture of the menu or staple a menu if it's a paper menu. Like, if it's something like this, just take one with you. Or if it's, you know, one like the, you know, like this, if it's this kind of a thing, like if they have the to-go menu. But certainly a picture, or like a picture of the plate, like anywhere you're using the logo. Like if there's a awning in the front, or some kind of a bill of fare or whatever that is, you know, the menu du jour. Put that there too, so that we know what it is that's included in the agreement. So companies gets a little bit tricky, because you might have the company name on many different things. You know, it might be on correspondence, it might be on business cards, it might be on, we used to do these things called write a letter, type a letter, and then we would have the names on the stationery. That's what paper was. Okay, I don't know if you guys do that anymore, envelopes, those things, so that you would have that on there. Often with a logo, so we'd have the branding and then also the name of the company. You might have to do the address of the company, so the address has to be cleared as well. Yes, so you might make up a name of a street in San Francisco, and that could work. Yes?
So if you don't get any profit from your film,
Yes?
can you still use,
So if you don't get profits from your film, can you still use the stuff that you don't have cleared? Well, you don't know that you're not getting profits from your film. And no. No. Just say no. It's better to say no. Yeah, just get everything cleared that you can think of. I mean, maybe not the Tabasco. I think that's okay. So, organizations. These would be things like, you know, I was showing you Project Open Hand, things like this. These guys, I mean, one of the best places to get clearances and even product placement is from organizations. So really think about what your characters are about. You know, are they tree huggers or are they rifle people? What kind of stores do they go to? Where do they shop? what might you have? So for instance, this kind of bag, you don't have to get cleared. But what sort of characters might have a bag like this in their house? Or what kind of characters might shop with a bag like this? Could be a mom, yeah. You see them, right, with stuff. What's that? A grandmother, absolutely. So you see people carrying bags. If you have somebody shopping Union Square in your story, and you want to give them Saks Fifth Avenue, if you want to give them Nordstrom's, if you want to give them whatever else is around, Macy's, guess what? You got to get permission. So instead, you might want to get some higher end nondescript, we call it nondescript, ND, bags. Like maybe they've got the leather version of this. And then that way you don't have to worry about not getting Tiffany's or whatever else is down there. But yeah, and if you have to make up a company for your story, get it cleared. You know, do your Google search to see if it exists already. You might even be okay if it doesn't exist in your town, but it exists somewhere else in the world. That might be okay. So this summer, when we were doing the web series, we had to come up with letters for our TV station. And we had a couple of different ones. We also wanted something that the web series people, you know, faculty and directors and whatever, would like, you know, not just like 4 random letters. And it had to make sense for the West Coast, so it had to begin with a K. And so we came up with KEUR. But we had to make sure that there was not another KEUR TV station in the United States. And so, thankfully, there's Google. The Google, as I like to say. Now, this is another, so this one here, when we're talking about organizations, this is a lovely map. You can tell I love maps, right? This one happens to come from Doctors Without Borders. It's a good size map. You could use it for a lot of things. I usually do it to find out where people are from in the world. But you would want to contact them. Now, if you're contacting companies, who do you contact? You just call 1-800 Doctors Without Borders? Right, it's like, oh my God, what do I do? So you go to their website, and usually there'll be a thing that says contact us or who to contact. The person or group within a company or organization that you want to contact is usually under public relations. Okay, there'll be somebody who deals with public relations. In some cases, it might be somebody who deals with social media, but this is a little different from the regular social media. So I would start with, hey, hi, it's me. It's Unique. Hi, I'm calling because I'd really like to use some stuff. Who can I talk to at your business? If you're lucky, the person on the phone is not the highest level person, right? Because it's the person answering the phone. So they're probably more like in line with what you're doing. And then you just say, hey, I'm working on this really cool film. We really want to use your map and some other stuff, mail that you send to people. Who can I talk to, right? And so then, in many cases, you can send the forms via the internet and have them sign it, scan it, and send it back. Sometimes you might have to get a hard copy. Depends on where you are geographically in relationship to where these people are. Something like this seems like a simple thing. You know what this is? Yeah. MLB, Major League Baseball. Don't even go there. All right? Football, NFL, don't go there. If you have a burning desire to show a sporting group, the San Jose Sharks are really happy to let you use their logos and their literature and everything else, except that their colors are really bright and really dominate things. And for the most part, your characters are probably not necessarily going to be Sharks people. So think about it. Maybe instead you look for the local minor league team. Or maybe you find, well, if you follow a university and it's a big university, you might come into almost the same situation. If you're making a certificate that somebody graduated from a university, got to get permission. Don't just put University of California on the thing. Make up a school. Northern California University. We don't have one. That's not bad. We do have University of California, San Francisco. We have San Francisco State. We have USF, University of San Francisco. I'd leave San Francisco out of the title if you're doing a school, a college. If you're doing a high school or an elementary school, you also have to go through clearances. And that's less likely that you can use their particular name. So on the web series that featured a lot of high schools, the main high school took a very long time to come up with a name and a logo, a mascot for that high school. And then all the sports teams that they were playing, because the show takes place at a high school. So every episode, there's some kind of game going on. You got to find out what season is it, what's the sport or sports, what's the name of the team where they are. When you're doing the high school gym, you have to come up with all the pennants, all the banners from now and the past, because they have 50 years of history. Wow, that's a lot. So you want to think about all of that stuff, and it all comes down to the art department a lot of times, and then clearances that involve production and the legal people. So we talked about photographs with, there we go, numbers. Okay, here, I'll go in the right direction. Street names, talked about that a little bit. Cities. Don't just assume you can use city and county of San Francisco. You might have to come up with something like, well, what would you, who can think of a good name for another city in the Bay Area? A fake name. Because sometimes this comes up when we have to come up with a taxi company. Bay City's one of mine. I always like using Bay City. Yeah.
Bay City.
Yeah.
Sand City.
Sand, it exists.
Yeah.
There is a Sand City.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Can't use Sand City. Sorry. Yeah. I know. So you got to think of it. You know, what would make sense if you had to come up with yet another town in California? It happens. You know. Schools. So we talked about schools. You might have to come up with a different school name. Geographic locations. Something like a hill, a mountain, a lake, a bay, a lagoon. Okay? These are things that you can, in some circumstances, use a real one that exists, but depending on how it's being used or portrayed, you might have to make it up. Okay, things that you can forge. Driver's licenses, and what do you need on a driver's license? You need a picture, you need a name, you need a date of birth, you need an address. Right, you need that ID number. Yeah, so you're not going to use yours. So there's a whole lot of information on a driver's license. What about a passport? Again, picture, big name, long name, date of birth, the passport number, and then whatever all those little things are that embossed on your passport, all that little picture stuff. It's pretty intense. Name badges, that might be as simple as the server at the fast food restaurant that you made up. It might be the nurse or the doctor at the hospital and everybody else who works at the hospital. It might be the lanyard name badge. It could be all those people that are in town right now attending the Dreamforce convention that's messed up all the traffic. You know, so think about what it is, and this is again why you need first and last names, you know, or supply them, or you go down your list of crew. Police and detective badges. If you don't have permission from the city of San Francisco to show their logos, then you might have to make up a police department. Yikes. And then the badges, what do they look like? Look at what's the real one and then see what you're going to make up. And then credit cards. It's a lot. Now electronics. So products, different products. We talked about like Apple and other computer products. Often you don't have to, like if you're getting an Apple product placement or an Apple clearance, they rarely say that they are the only computer you can show in your movie. They almost always let you mix and match with Dell and HP and Bio and whatever else is out there. If your movie is a contemporary one, if your project is contemporary, chances are you're going to have phones, laptops, iPads, whatever the other stuff is you guys have in your backpacks that are rectangular. And so you want to try to make them interesting too, not just boring rectangles. And then the graphics on the screen have to be cleared. So if you have somebody doing a search, Google's pretty good about saying, yeah, you can use Google, otherwise you're going to come up with Snoogle or Smoogle or Frugal or something. Yeah, so you have to check all of that stuff. And then you might not be able to make it look exactly like a Google page. So the screen graphics are going to be important. Again, that's why you have your art department and your graphic designer. Okay, so that's the electronics. This one, public domain, Creative Commons. Write this down and look it up. There are things like public domain. Do you know what that is? That's when you can use stuff. Because we're now in the internet age, all kinds of electronic information, international, universal, all over the place, has to do with copyrights and other related rights. So Creative Commons legal code, CC0 1.0 universal. It's really, really important. That lets you know about trademarks, patents, what you can use in general. And it has to do with not just the United States, but other places internationally. Why is this important? Well, if you want to access a couple of 100,000 images that are now available to you to use, artwork, the Metropolitan Museum in New York earlier this year, made all images that are public domain available under Creative Commons 0, under this group, Creative Commons. So now you can use some things. This open access with the Museum of Art. And there are other things available. I think you can link in from this website to images internationally as well. So now you have something that you can reproduce. And if you look this stuff up, you can find out what it is that you need to do to access it. So that's open access. So that should also answer some of your questions about how much can you show or how much reproduction can I do. So I want to give you just a little idea of the process of going through these things. So when you get a script, it then goes through legal, we like to say, where, and you can do this, it's not like you have to go call a lawyer. You can analyze a lot of this yourself. Identify anything that needs to be cleared, specified, or replaced. So in other words, names, places, any noun, people, places, and things. Identify them. And then there are product placement services. They're mostly in Hollywood, but you can contact them. Hey, they might say we don't do student films, but you know what? They might say, yeah, we can do some stuff. We can work with you. But just look up product placement services and see what they offer. And the people that usually are using product placement or who need clearances are going to be in the art department, in set decorations, in props, and in costumes. Because why do they want product placement or clearances?
Don't you get like money sometimes for product?
No. Don't think about getting money from product placement. I mean, if that happens, that's going to happen on a movie that you're so far away from at this point, and it wouldn't help you. Because if it comes in, it would go into production. It wouldn't go to you. But what you can get is you can get stuff to use for free. So if you are on a show that has an Apple product placement, They will send you the stuff to use. You might have to send it back afterwards. In fact, a lot of the product placement that you get, unless it's edible or drinkable, you're going to have to send back. But you get to use it. And sometimes you might get to buy it at a discount when you're done with it, which can be fun too. And you might be surprised at all the things that are available. But the clearances can help you a lot because then you don't have to create these things. You don't have to design them and replace them, doing labels or doing new graphics. So as I was saying, these are the sorts of places that we will frequently contact at the beginning of any show. Electronics companies, coffee companies, opera, symphony, ballet, museums, organizations, restaurants, city and county governments, hospitals and schools. These are the sorts of places that your characters go in and around a lot in the stories. So think about where they are and what they do. And that will probably have something to do with your needs for product placement and clearances.